Is your house quietly making you poor? Most people think saving money is about earning more, but your grandmother knew better. She used something called the replacement test to spot the hidden money wasters that most of us ignore. Today, I'm showing you 10 common household items that are draining your bank account right now. From your kitchen to your closet, we're applying the frugal rules of the past to your modern life. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your shopping list the same way again. Subscribe if you value real-world wisdom, and tell me in the comments what's one thing you stopped buying to save money. The two apartments. Picture two apartments on the very same street in a quiet American town. In the first apartment lives a woman named Patricia. Patricia has a closet stuffed with clothing, a garage she cannot park a car in, and a kitchen drawer that will not fully close. Patricia earns good money, real money, the kind of paycheck her own mother would have marveled at. And yet, Patricia lies awake most nights, running numbers in her head, terrified of what would happen if her job disappeared tomorrow. Down the hall lives a woman named Linda. Linda earns less than half of what Patricia brings home each month. Linda's apartment is smaller, plainer, and far less impressive to a visitor's eye. But Linda sleeps soundly. Linda has never once lain awake wondering how she would survive a bad month. The difference between these two women has nothing to do with income and everything to do with a single, hidden concept most modern households have completely forgotten. That concept is called optionality. Optionality simply means freedom, the freedom to breathe, to move, to choose, without being weighed down by everything you own. Patricia's wealth is trapped inside objects that no longer serve her. Linda's wealth lives inside open space, both in her apartment and in her mind. This is the quiet difference between looking rich and actually feeling free, and it is the difference we are going to uncover together today. Think for a moment about what Patricia's apartment actually sounds like on a Tuesday evening. There is the scrape of a closet door that will not fully slide shut. There is the soft thud of a box shifting on a garage shelf that is already dangerously overloaded. There is the quiet, persistent hum of a subscription box arriving on the porch, another item joining the pile before the last one has even been used. Now, picture Linda's apartment on that same Tuesday evening. There is the soft clink of two coffee mugs in an otherwise empty cupboard. There is a single closet with room to spare on either end of the rod. There is silence, real silence, the kind that comes from a home that does not ask anything of its owner beyond simple care. Neither woman inherited this outcome. Neither woman was born understanding optionality. Linda simply learned, somewhere along the way, to ask a single question before nearly every purchase, a question we are going to hand to you in just a moment, one that her own mother likely asked while standing at a kitchen counter decades earlier. The second cost math. Before we walk through the 10 items, we need to understand a truth almost nobody talks about out loud. Every single object you bring into your home carries a second, invisible price tag. The first price tag is what you paid at the register. The second price tag is what that item costs you every single day it sits in your house afterward. Think about a treadmill folded in the corner of a spare bedroom. That treadmill is not just an object anymore. It is quietly renting square footage from your own home, space you are still paying a mortgage or rent on every month. Financial writers sometimes call this the implicit rent of clutter, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is also a mental cost, one that is harder to put a number on but just as real. Studies on household clutter have repeatedly linked visual mess to elevated stress hormones, the same cortisol response your body produces when you're running late or facing a deadline. Every overflowing drawer is a tiny, silent alarm bell going off in your nervous system. Our grandmothers understood this instinctively, long before anyone used the word cortisol. A tidy kitchen table was not just about appearances, it was about peace of mind at the end of a long day. So here's the tool we'll use throughout this video, something called the replacement test. Ask yourself this about any object in your home. If this item vanished today, would you spend your own money to buy it again? If the honest answer is no, that object has already told you everything you need to know. Consider how this plays out with something as ordinary as a slow cooker gathering dust on a top shelf. The purchase price might have been $40, small enough to feel harmless at the register. But add up 18 months of shelf space, the awkward reorganizing every time it has to be moved to reach something else, and the quiet guilt that flickers every time the cabinet door opens, and that $40 object has quietly cost far more than its price tag ever suggested. Our grandmothers rarely owned more than their kitchens could comfortably hold, not because they lacked ambition, but because every object had to earn its place through actual, repeated use. That single standard, earn your place through use, is the exact thread running through every item we are about to walk through together. The Museum of Past Enthusiasm. The first category we are tackling is what we like to call the Museum of Past Enthusiasm. This is the corner of the closet, the shelf in the garage, or the bin in the basement holding hobbies you fell in love with once and then quietly walked away from. Picture the skis leaning in the corner, untouched since a trip 3 winters ago. Picture the guitar with a broken string nobody has bothered to replace. Picture the camera bag with dust settling into every seam, once carried everywhere, now forgotten. None of this happened because you are lazy or inconsistent. Interests genuinely change, and there is nothing shameful about that truth. Imagine a woman named Susan back in 1958, standing in her sewing room. Susan had once been passionate about hand quilting, spending entire winters piecing together patterns by lamplight. But by the following spring, her energy had shifted toward canning vegetables from the garden instead. Susan did not build a shrine to her old quilting frame. She sold it, traded it, or repurposed the fabric scraps into something useful, and she felt lighter for it. Here is the replacement test applied directly to this category. Look at that dusty guitar, that unused ski gear, that camera nobody touches. Ask yourself honestly, are you just as passionate about this hobby today as you were the day you bought the equipment? If the spark is genuinely gone, that item is no longer serving your present life. It is only decorating your past one. The modern translation of Susan's instinct is simple. Instead of letting these items rot quietly in a closet, sell them online this week and let that money fund something your current self actually wants. Item 2. Kitchen gadgets and the 18-month rule. Now let's step into the kitchen, the emotional heart of nearly every American household. Open any cabinet and you will likely find at least one gadget purchased with the very best of intentions. The fondue set from a holiday gift exchange, the bread maker bought during a burst of ambition that produced exactly 2 loaves before retirement to the back shelf, the specialty waffle iron, shaped like something festive, used once a year if that. Here is where the second cost math becomes brutally clear. Imagine a $300 kitchen gadget that gets used only twice a year. Divide that price by 2 uses, and you get a cost per use of $150 every single time you make a waffle. That is not a bargain. That is one of the most expensive breakfasts in America, hiding in plain sight. Picture a woman named Barbara in 1962 standing at her stove with a single cast-iron skillet in her hand. That one skillet fried the eggs, baked the cornbread, and seared the Sunday roast, all with the same well-seasoned surface passed down from her own mother. Barbara did not need 6 specialty pans because one well-loved tool did the work of many. The modern translation here is refreshingly simple, and it costs you nothing. Before buying any single-purpose kitchen gadget again, ask whether a tool you already own could do 90% of the job just as well. And for the gadgets already gathering dust in your cabinets right now, apply an 18-month rule. If you have not reached for it in a year and a half, it has already answered the replacement test question for you, quietly, from inside that dark cabinet. Item 3. Closet deadwood. Every closet in America is hiding at least a few items that have never once been worn, tags still swinging from the collar, price sticker still faintly visible underneath. We call this closet deadwood. Clothing kept alive in your closet purely because of what it cost, not because of what it does for your life today. Picture the blazer bought for a job interview that never happened. Picture the dress purchased for an event that got canceled at the last minute. These items sit there, silently reminding you of money spent, and somehow that guilt keeps you from letting them go. Minimalist organizers across the country swear by a simple standard known as the 18-month rule, and it applies here just as powerfully as it did in the kitchen. If a piece of clothing has not touched your body in 18 months, it is no longer part of your identity. It is only part of your history. Picture a woman named Deborah in 1965, opening her cedar closet on a Sunday afternoon. Deborah's closet held perhaps a dozen garments total, each one worn, mended, and worn again, each thread carrying the faint smell of line-dried cotton and lavender sachets tucked between the hangers. Deborah did not measure her worth by the number of dresses hanging on the rod. She measured it by how well each one served her. Organizing professionals consistently report that closets shrunk down to only the garments people genuinely wear take roughly half the time to maintain compared to overstuffed ones. The modern translation is simple and immediate. Pull every unworn, tagged item from your closet this weekend. Try it on honestly in front of the mirror. And if it does not pass the replacement test, donate it to someone who will actually wear it. Item 4. Boredom upgrades. Now we turn to a category almost every household in America is quietly guilty of: the boredom upgrade. This is the perfectly functional phone, tablet, or television replaced not because it broke, but because a newer, shinier model appeared in a store window or a commercial. Picture the old smartphone sitting in a kitchen drawer, screen still working perfectly, battery still holding a decent charge, replaced purely because boredom whispered that something newer would feel more exciting. Here is an important truth worth saying out loud. Boredom with a working object is not the same thing as failure of that object. If your television still displays a clear picture, it has not failed you. Your attention has simply wandered elsewhere. Replacing a fully functional item purely to chase novelty is not really an upgrade at all. Financial writers often describe it plainly as wealth destruction, trading real working value for the temporary thrill of something new. Picture a woman named Nancy in 1970 sitting beside her family's television set, a set that had faithfully served her household for over a decade. Nancy's neighbors upgraded their sets every few years, chasing the newest console model. Nancy kept hers running, had it repaired twice by a local technician, and quietly put the money she saved into a savings account instead. The modern translation is powerful and immediate. Before replacing any working electronic item, apply the replacement test. If it vanished today, would you rush out to buy this exact model again, or would you simply be relieved to finally have an excuse to upgrade? And instead of letting the old device gather dust once you do decide to upgrade, sell it. Turn that forgotten drawer item into liquid cash sitting in your account instead of dead weight sitting in a drawer. Item 5. The ecosystem items. Some possessions do not simply sit quietly once you bring them home. They multiply, dragging an entire ecosystem of ongoing expenses behind them. Financial planners sometimes call this the lifestyle multiplier effect, and it is one of the sneakiest wealth drains in the entire American household. Picture a boat sitting on a trailer in the driveway. The purchase price was only the beginning. Now there is a slip fee at the marina, insurance premiums, annual maintenance, winter storage, and gas that costs far more at the water than at the pump. Add all of that together year after year, and many families discover the ongoing cost of owning the boat has quietly outpaced what they originally paid for it. The same pattern shows up with an oversized vehicle used mostly for a single annual camping trip, or a vacation property that sits empty 11 months of the year, while property taxes and upkeep bills arrive every single quarter. Picture a woman named Jessica today, standing in her driveway looking at a boat that has been used exactly twice this entire year. Jessica loves the idea of boating far more than the actual reality of boating, and that gap between idea and reality is costing her family thousands of dollars annually. The replacement test becomes especially powerful here. Ask yourself honestly, is this item still delivering joy that matches its true full cost, including every hidden expense hiding behind it? If the honest answer is no, this is precisely the category where selling brings the single largest financial relief of anything on this entire list. Think about the weight of that guilt every time Jessica drives past the marina on her way to work, glancing sideways at a slip fee she is still paying, whether the boat moves or not. Compare that to a woman named Margaret 2 streets over, who sold her family's rarely used camper 2 summers ago and used the proceeds to pad an emergency fund that finally let her sleep through the night without worry. Margaret did not lose a lifestyle when she sold that camper. She gained one, a lifestyle built on breathing room instead of monthly bills tied to an object collecting cobwebs in the driveway. The modern translation is direct. Calculate the full annual cost of any ecosystem item you own, not just the purchase price, and compare that number honestly to how much genuine happiness it brings your family each year. Item 6. Just-in-case clutter. Now we open the junk drawer, and every American household has one. Loose wires with no memory of which device they once belonged to. Batteries of uncertain charge, a small mountain of mismatched screws saved from furniture assembled years ago. The justification is always the same familiar phrase, whispered while closing the drawer. This might come in handy someday. It is worth remembering that families during the Depression era truly did save nearly everything, turning tin cans into toys and flour sacks into dresses. But their saving was systematic, purposeful, and organized around an actual plan for reuse. Today's just-in-case clutter is often the opposite, saved without any plan at all, simply out of a vague fear of future regret. Picture a woman named Mary in 1958 keeping a small tin of buttons salvaged from worn-out shirts before they became cleaning rags. Mary's tin had a purpose, a system, and a clear use waiting for it. Compare that to a drawer full of unlabeled cords with no plan whatsoever attached to them. The replacement test cuts through this fog beautifully. If you genuinely do not know what a specific wire or part goes to, and you haven't needed it in over a year, it is not potential. It is simply stress sitting quietly in a drawer, waiting to make you feel disorganized every single time you open it. The modern translation is refreshingly quick to apply. Set a timer for 15 minutes this week. Empty that drawer completely onto the kitchen table and sort everything into exactly 3 piles. Keep with a specific known purpose, recycle responsibly, or discard entirely. You will likely find that 90% of that drawer's contents has not been touched in years. Notice, too, how differently that drawer feels once it is finally sorted. Where there was once a small, chaotic monument to vague anxiety, there is now a neat, shallow space that closes easily and asks nothing of you. That small physical relief is not imaginary. It is the same nervous system response researchers have measured when clutter disappears from a living space, a genuine and measurable dip in daily stress that costs absolutely nothing to achieve. Items 7 through 10, the final stretch. We are almost through our list, and these last 4 categories move a little faster because you already know the pattern by now. Item 7 is the bookshelf full of titles you finished once and will honestly never open again. Books carry sentimental weight, but a shelf sagging under the load of unread or once-read titles is simply visual clutter dressed up as intellect. Donate what you will not reread and keep only the few that genuinely earned a permanent place on your shelf. Item 8 is the home gym equipment gathering dust in a spare room, the treadmill turned coat rack, the dumbbells nobody has lifted since last January. Here, the opportunity cost is worth mentioning gently, because money spent on equipment that sits unused could instead have been growing quietly in an investment account this entire time. Item 9 covers functional duplicates, the reality that many closets hold not just clothing, but nearly identical clothing, perhaps a dozen nearly matching shirts, when 3 or 4 would genuinely serve every need. Picture a woman named Lisa standing in front of her closet, realizing she owns 47 shirts, but genuinely reaches for the same 5 week after week. The other 42 are not choices, they are clutter wearing the disguise of options. Item 10 is perhaps the most emotionally loaded category of all, negative value gifts. These are objects kept purely out of guilt. A decorative item from a relative, a knick-knack that does not match your taste or your life, held onto only because letting it go feels disrespectful. Here is a gentle but important truth. A gift's value lives in the moment it was given, not in a permanent obligation to display it forever. Letting go of an unwanted gift does not erase the love behind it. And applying the replacement test to each of these 4 categories will likely clear more physical and emotional space than almost anything else on this entire list. Picture a woman named Karen unwrapping a ceramic figurine from a relative's attic years ago, a piece she has dusted faithfully every spring, despite never once liking it. Karen finally realized that keeping an object out of guilt honors the giver's feelings far less than she assumed, while releasing it to someone who would genuinely treasure it honors both the gift and her own home far more honestly. The same logic applies to the sagging bookshelf and the silent treadmill. Objects kept purely out of obligation, whether to a past version of yourself, a distant relative, or a fitness goal you have quietly moved on from, are rarely neutral. They ask something of you every single day they remain, even when you are not consciously thinking about them. The Depression-era pivot and the big reveal. Now we arrive at the piece of this puzzle almost nobody talks about, the part that separates simply throwing things away from actually building something better. Families who lived through the Depression era did not treat discarding as the end of an object's story. They practiced a philosophy often summed up in 4 simple words: make do and mend. When something no longer served its original purpose, it was not simply thrown into a landfill, it was transformed into something new and useful. An old cotton shirt became a cleaning rag. A worn-out towel became padding for a quilt. Even torn stockings were unraveled and reused for stuffing or mending elsewhere in the house. This is the missing piece most modern decluttering conversations leave out entirely. The goal was never emptiness for its own sake. The goal was intention, making certain that every single object in the home was either actively useful or consciously chosen. And here, finally, is the deepest truth hiding underneath everything we have discussed today. Wealth was never about how much you could accumulate. Wealth was always about how clearly you understood what was actually enough. Patricia, the woman from our very first story, was not poor. She was simply surrounded by objects that no longer represented her present life, each one quietly draining her money, her space, and her peace of mind. Linda was not simply earning less and getting by. Linda had discovered, whether she realized it consciously or not, that freedom lives in the space between what you own and what you actually need. This is the forgotten wisdom our grandmothers carried in their kitchens, their sewing rooms, and their cedar closets, wisdom that modern advertising has spent decades quietly training us to forget. Every commercial break, every glossy catalog, every perfectly staged online advertisement is built on a single quiet promise that the next purchase will finally deliver the peace you are looking for. But peace was never sitting on a store shelf waiting to be purchased. Peace was sitting in Barbara's cast-iron skillet, in Deborah's cedar closet with room to spare, in Mary's small tin of carefully saved buttons. Peace was never about acquiring more. It was about the quiet confidence of knowing exactly what you already have is enough. That confidence is the real inheritance our grandmothers left behind, tucked quietly between the pages of their ledgers and the folds of their mended dresses, waiting patiently for someone to rediscover it. So, here's my challenge for you this week. The Cyclical Decluttering Challenge. Pick 10 items from your home, the just-in-case clutter, the unused gadgets, or that guilt-tripping gift, and apply the replacement test. If you wouldn't spend your hard-earned money to buy it again today, it's time to let it go. Whether you sell it or donate it, notice how your home starts to breathe again. That feeling of enough is exactly what our grandmothers practiced decades ago. It's not just decluttering, it's reclaiming your peace of mind. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think we'd all be less stressed if we returned to a simpler, more intentional way of living? I read every single one of your stories. If this trip back in time resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to Back Then With Truel, and share this with a friend who needs permission to let go. Remember, true wealth isn't about what you own. It's about knowing what is enough. I'll see you in the next one.